Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning blog. My name is Melissa Galasso, and today we're going to talk about some information that has come out of the Government Accountability Office, or GAO, with respect to COVID. Now, since March of 2020, Congress has been focused on providing trillions of dollars of COVID relief for families, for businesses, as part of their response to the pandemic. And obviously, the GAO is looking at oversight with respect to these monies. And so the goal initially, obviously, was to get money out there as quickly as possible. We had a global pandemic, big, nasty virus out there. But we definitely have some insights that we have learned from these programs. And so today what we're going to take a look at is some of the insights that they have found with respect to these programs. And so this was published on November 14th, and it really talks about, the fact that we have to take some lessons learned. We know it is important to distribute funds quickly, right? That nobody's going to argue. But we also understand that we wanted the money to go to those who needed it. And we've learned a lot about fraud and potentially some fraud prevention here. So here are some insights with respect to what are some things that could help in the future. Again, hopefully never another global pandemic, but what are some fraud schemes that we have identified and some things that we can now take into consideration as we move forward to reduce opportunity to commit fraud as we go through this. And so we knew we had data challenges. We know we had system challenges. We know we had lots of things that were kind of problematic in this area. So insight number one with respect to misrepresentation is probably self-certification alone is not a very good control, right? So having people say, yes, I qualify, probably not sufficient for trillions of dollars of federal funding. Second insight was with respect to fraud conspiracy. Assess fraud risk to include emerging and complex schemes as those involving conspiracy from cases affecting other programs, right? So if we find out from one program, lessons learned, try to figure out, okay, well, how can we prevent this in the future? Because those people are going to try again especially if they were successful with the first program. Insight number three, not leveraging available data. And so if there is Department of Treasury has free payment integrity services, as well as other agency data, we probably should have used it to take a look at the accuracy of what the funds were being used for. And then legacy systems limit data usage, right? So we know that the federal government has to do a better job of investing in infrastructure, in specifically the IT area. And so interoperability, there's a word, issues to support the future use of data analytics for fraud prevention and data detection. Identity theft. We had a lot of that with COVID, and so assume identity information has been compromised and develop and apply upfront controls to verify application or applicant identities, right? A lot of people, we saw one example was terrible, it was a daycare who used the information of the children to go and get additional funding, right? So terrible, terrible, terrible. So again, really vet the applicants there. And then limit data access and use. So ensure payment integrity checks and fraud controls are part of program design with an emphasis on ensuring data access and use for fraud prevention. So again, what did we learn from this? Again, we didn't have a lot of preparation for COVID, kind of came out of nowhere. We've never seen that type of modern day version of this. And so it's okay to have a lesson learned. It's not okay to repeat failure. And so what are our lessons and what are we going to do about it? And what's very interesting is GAO is working very hard here. As of August 2023, they have identified 95 recommendations that federal agencies should be implementing to manage fraud risk, and an additional 10 that Congress should take, right? So remember, Congress did CARES Act and they did the CAA and ARPA, right? Those are federal, those are bills that came out of Congress. Obviously, the agencies have to support them, but there were 10 things that have been identified for congressional action. None of them have been addressed by Congress. Now, we know Congress is struggling to move things forward, but when we know we have millions and millions of dollars of fraud, right? We really should be doing something about it. And so GAO is following up, because that's their job, on how we are spending our federal dollars and ensuring going forward that we have success here. So hopefully you found that a little bit interesting. I often get questions on my courses, especially when I talk about employee retention credits. They're like, well, what did we learn from PPP? So the answer is we did learn, we are getting better, and we're hopefully going to see improvements on both the congressional side and on the agency side with these lessons learned so that we don't have these issues going forward. And even if we don't have a global pandemic, probably a lot of these items can be used anyway as just best practices. All right, well, that's a wrap. Thank you for joining me on this week's blog, and I look forward to seeing you on next week's blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.